Welcome, everyone, to the Founder to Founder series brought to you by One Pitch. We sit down with founders, get them to share with us more about their journey, tell us about their company, where it's headed next, and uncover truths behind how these entrepreneurs have created success for themselves. Joining us today is Alex Sanfilippo. He's the founder and podcast host at PodPros. Alex started his first business at the age of 10 and has successfully launched 3 other companies since then. Alex, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Jared, thanks so much for having me. Really an honor to be here.
Absolutely. And, funny enough, you interviewed me a few months back, so now we get to flip the
Yes.
script and I get to interview you.
I was so excited when I saw that because I never knew if that opportunity would come, but I was like, yes, this is so cool. But yeah, you did a great job. My community actually still talks about some of the practical lessons that you gave us in that conversation. So thank you.
Awesome, man. And I'm excited to reciprocate. I know what all the cool stuff you guys are doing at PodPros. Us at One Pitch, we've used one of the services that's part of PodPros, which I'm really excited to have the viewers hear more about today. So why don't we start off? Just tell us a little bit about PodPros and what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, sure. So it's podcasting through and through. Let's put it that way. So basically, I got into podcasting as a host and just realized there was a need for solutions in podcasting. It's almost like a 20-year-old industry or 19. I don't know. It's an old industry, like on paper, but it's still very young. And I just realized there was need, like from a software perspective. So that's really some of the things I set out to do. So PodPros is like our parent company, if you will. And we've got a flagship product right now called PodMatch. We have Podcast SOP, and we're launching a few other products, hopefully within the next couple of years. The idea is like one a year, but the whole thing is just, hey, we're creating software solutions specifically for the podcasting industry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know there's a lot of synergy between us and what we do at One Pitch and PodMatch specifically. Can you share a little bit about that service?
Yeah, sure. So PodMatch was actually the first thing that we launched, and it was before we even had the name PodPros. But Jared, here's the deal. Like, I didn't want to have social media for like every product we ever did. I was like, this is going to become a nightmare. Like, we launched a second one. We had 2 sets of social media and everything. I'm like, I don't want to be in this world. I'm like, we need a company that we can just say, this is the company and these are the product suite. But it started with PodMatch. And basically, to make it really simple for everyone to understand, think of like a dating app, but instead of connecting people for dates, it connects people for podcast interviews. So it connects a podcast guest and a host based off a massive like algorithm, like a bunch of different criteria points, and says this person would be a good match for this person to be on their show or to be on the show, right? Like, the whole idea is, can we just get those ideal interviews together so the host can get the show out, produced, done, and in front of people to be able to listen to?
Yeah, and believe me, being a I wouldn't say I'm a podcast host, but I am affiliated with the podcast, and I know how tough it is to find guests and to try to get them booked and to try to keep that flow consistent. So I totally get why that service, and there's a huge need for it, right? I'm sure you guys have a lot of folks on there who are using it in day out and finding a lot of success.
Oh yeah, it's every day I hear an email, I get an email or hear like a voicemail from somebody saying thank you so much because I was out of guests, right? Like, that was it. It was just whoever would come to me, no matter what their expertise was anymore, just please show up so I can stay consistent with my releases. But we've really set out to solve that problem, and it was the same problem I had when I got started in podcasting. So it was just, for us, a really big deal to create PodMatch to really serve the industry well.
hmm No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And the other company you mentioned, I don't want to botch this. Podcast SOP, correct?
Correct, which stands for standard operating procedures. Another
Okay.
problem in podcasting that we saw was just that people were having trouble keeping up with the releases of their episodes, and newer show hosts were really stressed out. And so I used to be like, hey, go use Asana, Trello, Notion, like all these different tools. And the problem with that was, if somebody was already overwhelmed and had no experience with those things, I just made them even more overwhelmed because I gave them a tool that does 20,000 things, right? And sure, like those tools are great. I'm not trying to downplay that. But if someone's already like, I'm about to quit, and then you give them that, it doesn't help. So we basically built something that literally just helps you release episodes. It's a glorified checklist that you
Oh,
can
that's
add due dates to. You create it yourself. So there's templates you can use, but most people just go in there and make their own template. It's like, here's the 25 things I do every time I release an episode. It puts in
mhm.
order. If you have a team, you can comment back and forth together. You can assign tasks. You can upload things. You can add due dates. The whole idea is, hey, every time you're releasing an episode, hit add and go through your whole checklist. Don't ever have to worry about it or remember it again. You know exactly where you're at any point. And that was the problem we set out to solve, which we've been able to lower the stress levels of podcasters with the tool. So I'm very happy with it as well.
Yeah, and I think I'm a little embarrassed to say I'm still like on the analog method where I'm like, okay, I've got my spreadsheet and I've got my emails and we're using Slack and we got all sorts of things. So that's certainly something we're gonna have to check out here. Um,
Definitely.
but I know obviously, your customers, right? They are podcast hosts. I would assume some of them might even be podcast guests. And what kind of makes them unique, I guess? Is there anything outside of just the podcast world that you kind of seen with the customers that you're working with?
Yeah, obviously they're all interviewers, like interview podcasters. And occasionally we get people who join who then email us immediately and say, "Why did I don't need this? Like, I don't have any guests." I'm like, "Why did you sign up for it?" Like you don't have to be here. And we're always very nice, and we've been able to make partnerships with some of those people. But anyway, in general, yeah, it's people that are they either have an interview show or they're looking to be interviewed. They have some expertise, and it's a strange building a software that has two avatars. It's like a total no. Everyone who's in software says don't build something that has two avatars, but that's the need that we had, and dating apps have figured it out. So we decided we'd try. But so
Mhm,
we've got both. We've got the guest and the host, and it's just a huge like array of people. Like I
mhm.
can't even. I wish I could tell you, hey, it's mostly this and mostly that. But with 27,000 people using the software now, we've got people from golf experts to personal development coaches to dog lovers, right? And then like on the guest side, you've got people that are in journalism, you've got people that are professional athletes, you've got people that have been in politics. I mean, it's just a wide range, which makes for a weird product because it's hard to segment it in. But we've just done our best to make a community of, hey, we're just human beings, and this
Mhm.
is the way that we're showing up to serve the world. And that's kind of been our common trend, is just making sure that people who show up to use our platform, they all have service in mind and how they're doing this to show up in the world. And so I've just done my best to be very active in the community because I feel that that's what it requires when you have such a broad customer base, that I just
Mhm.
have to show up and be there and just lead with that example of, hey, we're here to serve and help each other.
Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking about your marketing team and how much fun they must have trying to to segment into different personas and different groups and things like that. I'm sure they enjoy it.
Yeah, it makes for actually the girl who runs marketing, she's like, this isn't even a job. She goes, the most stable therapeutic part of my life is doing this. She's like, I just get to be super creative because like really she can. I'm like, okay, try to reach the golf people today. Go for it. Right? Like, go ahead. I know nothing about it, but best of luck to you.
I love it, I love it. And by the way, I mean, obviously you're a podcaster, you got some nice equipment there. I,
Oh,
uh,
thank you.
I'm a little jealous. I should have my microphone in front of me, but unfortunately not today, so.
And it's fine. This is like if you're, listen, what you do, you don't need to. This is like a podcaster thing. Like even YouTube people don't have the mic in front of them. It's like just
Mm.
podcasters have got to have it there for some reason. I don't know why, just to prove we have one, but whatever. So thank you for the compliment though. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I'm curious who started that trend too. Who was like, "All right, we need the mic in front," and then, pretty soon that was just like a big landslide of people that started to follow after that.
I wish I knew. I only know that the the experts that I know. So I think of like Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, Jordan Harbinger, and all these guys do it, and they're kind of like the people I've always followed. I don't
Mhm.
know if there was a set of people before them. I know they got in pretty early, so I like to think that those are kind of the first tier. But there's
Yeah.
guys like the actual creator of podcasting. He does the same thing. So who knows? Maybe he was the first guy to do it.
The legends of the podcast game. Gotta give it up
Right?
to you guys. Uh, back to the service though, Alex. I know we were kinda chatting a little bit before this, but tell our viewers kind of what they should expect from you guys within the next few months here.
Yeah, I'll mention something we just released, and we did it somewhat like quietly. We did a little bit around it, but we haven't necessarily sent it out to everybody because again, going back to the culture that I've looked to set, which is we are here to serve, is we actually cut our revenue straight in half, and we give 50% of it back to the podcast host side of the platform. So as
Wow.
they're using our service and following the service, right? Like they got to go through the whole process, which is pretty easy. Like we not only do we match people, but you can also message in the platform and you can schedule the interview, mark it complete, say when the episode's coming out, review your guest. All that stuff can happen. When you follow that all the way through, we start actually paying podcast hosts. And it's not, I'm not going to say it's a lot of money. Like you're not getting rich by doing this by any means. But
Sure.
as of right now, it's like just shy of $20 that you can make potentially per episode, which I'm really happy with. And the whole idea is, hey, can we help these podcasters break even? Like they're pouring their hearts out and they're losing $40 or $50 a month. Can we help them break even by doing that? And again,
Mhm,
the whole idea was just this is the culture we want to set. We're here to give. Like we're all here to support each other, and
mhm,
it's worked really well for us. It's been really cool to see some creators now like getting really strategic with what they can do with the extra $20 they have per month. Right? Can they
nice.
hire a part-time VA or like what can they do? Right? Like there's all kinds of things. So it's been really fun. What's coming up next that I've not talked about anywhere, so I'm really excited to mention this. Is we've decided to roll into doing a podcast network as well. And we're
Awesome.
still defining the type of shows will be in a network. That basically means like, hey, come under our umbrella. We'll help promote it. We'll help edit. Like we'll do all that work, right? We'll help you monetize.
Mhm.
And we're still kind of figuring out what that looks like. But we just actually today, like 4 hours ago, I actually finally wired the money over, if you want to call it that, or sent the money over to the person who I bought a podcast from. So I bought the podcast, the brand, everything from this guy who he's going to kind of come in as a consultant, but we have somebody else who's in our organization already who's going to be the new host. And that's how we're going to launch the network with us purchasing the show and now having 2 shows of our own. And from there, we'll start going into our community and grabbing more people. But that's something that we've been really looking forward to doing because we know the power of a podcast network. So we're really excited to see where that goes as well.
That's huge, man. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And also, I mean, thank you for the work that you're doing. That's really commendable of you guys to give back like that. I don't know very many businesses, if any, who are taking a piece of their revenue and giving it back to the people that are using their service. I think it's oftentimes quite the opposite, where they're like, we'll take a little more revenue from you guys. Just pay us a little bit more. We want to make some more money. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's all purpose driven work. So I'm excited to be part of it in this way.
I love it. I love it. So Alex, I know you were an entrepreneur at a pretty young age. Um, who I should say, or what inspired you to want to take, that route as a professional?
Yeah, weirdly enough, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, both my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family. So it's kind of like maybe in my blood a little bit, right? Just like pre-positioned for it a little bit, right? Like I just kind of saw it growing up. But it was weird when I was a kid. You mentioned like starting a business really young. I was very self-aware, and by the age of 10, I realized that like I wasn't as good as other people in my life, including like my siblings, like my brothers, like all great musicians. I had no musical talent. Some people were like really good at school. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't good at video games. Wasn't good at sports. Like, and I'm not trying to downplay myself. I just didn't have any natural abilities in any of those things, which is like super weird for a kid, right? To like know that, but also like not be good at one of those things. And then one day I found a used golf ball, like across the street from like our neighborhood, there was a golf course. And we always played on it. We weren't supposed to. We always played on it. I picked up this golf ball. And I was like looking at it, and like a golfer's riding by in a cart, and he goes, "Hey kid, what's that ball say on it?" I was like, "Titleist Pro V1." And he's like, "I'll give you $3 for it." And I gave it to him. He gave me $3, and light bulb went off for the first time. And I was like, if we can dig golf balls out of this lake, guys, come here. Let's all dig golf balls out of the lake. Let's clean them up. Let's sell them here every Saturday morning. And that's exactly what we did. And it wasn't a legitimate business. I wasn't paying taxes or anything like that. Like, but at the end of the day, it was probably a year and a half that I did that. I learned a lot about business and learned that I really liked running a team. I was 10 years
Mhm.
old, telling other kids, like, here's what we're all going to do. Here's how we're going to split the money. Here's what, I enjoyed that. And that really just set me on this like passion for business and for entrepreneurship. And the rest of my life has just kind of been an effect of that, which is weird from 10 years old, but that's kind of the direction that my life went in from that one moment.
Yeah, that is that's a hell of a story, I have to say. I'm a golfer too, so I'm like, man, would I have paid a 10-year-old kid $3 for a golf ball? Probably.
If you were in one of those neighborhood golf courses and you weren't good and you'd already hit them all in the lake, then yeah, you
Yeah.
sure would.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, Alex, my last question for you. You successfully exited Daily PS in 2021, and first off, congratulations on that. That's
Thank you.
amazing. I'm just curious, was there any learnings that you had from that process of going through the exit, or even leading up to that you might want to share?
Yeah, so this was a multi-author blog that I ran. I started it 7 years ago and had a podcast with it. Like it was a whole thing. There was hundreds of people like contributing. We had a whole team. It was a really cool thing to be part of. And I realized that the last, I'd say, year that I was doing that was actually my best because
Mhm.
not that I stopped caring, but I let go of more. And when I let go of more, the growth just started exploding. When I stopped micromanaging people, checking the content myself instead of trusting a team, like when I started learning all that, is
Mhm.
when doors just started opening up because I had time to breathe instead of just be like always in the weeds of it.
Sure.
And when it even came to like making the transition, I was so like big picture at that time, seeing like where it was going, seeing the health of it, seeing the growth stall a little bit. That's when I realized that, you know what, like I'm a founder. It doesn't mean when I start something, it doesn't mean I have to be the one to finish it. Like it might be time to pass the baton. And
Yep.
ultimately, that's what I decided to do. But it's because I wasn't so in the weeds that I just let it get buried with me, right? Like it wasn't going in a massive downward trend. I just realized for my abilities, this is as big as this is ever going to get. I need
Yeah.
someone else with a bigger vision to take it over. And here's the thing that the couple that now has the reins that's running with it, in like 1 week, they like were like, "Hey, here's an idea that we had. We're gonna do with it." I was like, "Oh, why didn't I think of that? Like, that's brilliant!" Like, they're already seeing growth like overnight,
Wow.
and I think that was just a really cool thing for me and made me realize that, you know what, like during those transitions, don't expect like everything to happen exactly the way it should, and know when it's time for you to make those moves and just make it as peaceful and easy as possible. I trusted the people that took it over, and that made the whole thing just really simple. We obviously still did all the stuff you're supposed to do, but like it wasn't like, man, I hope these people don't try to screw me, you know? Like it was just a good time to let go. And I think that takes a level of humility and also just trust that's involved with it. But when you really trust that process, it can be something really amazing. And I trust that that brand is going to go on for a long time and become something better than I could have ever made it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, first of all, that is really inspirational, I would say, especially for a founder like myself to hear that. There's plenty of times where I've seen folks walk away, whether they've been pushed out or willingly walked away. But I think to say to yourself, hey, I've done all I can, and I want somebody else to take the reins is not easy to do. But at the same time, when it's time, it's time. And the
Yeah.
cool part I would say about that as well is that you get to see it grow, right? You get to
Yes.
see what you've created and see what that blossoms into. And that has to be honestly a really rewarding feeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is. It's like leaving a legacy, right? Like I'm no longer involved at all, but it's cool to see it live on. And
Mhm.
that'll kind of always be something I cherish. I'm probably not even going to publicize that ever, but the fact is, like, I know that I contributed to something that's adding value to the world, and that's important to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think that's a good point to wrap it up there, Alex. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun. I love being on the other side of things and getting to ask you the questions, and very much hoping we can do this again soon, man.
For sure, Jared. Thanks so much. It was an honor to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Everyone, Alex Sanfilippo, founder of PodPros. Thanks again, Alex.
Take care.